Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to one of our In Conversation series. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Chris Bravacos. Chris runs an agency in Harrisburg over in the US. Chris and I, we were introduced through a mutual connections, but you've become a Mission Hubs partner. So welcome to the Mission Hubs family, Chris. It's great to have you with us. And it was great to have you in London fairly recently for the Mission Hubs event. And we actually got to meet in person, which is fantastic, of course, in this digital world. So hi, Chris.
Hi, I'm glad
Hi.
to be here with you.
Chris, I always like to start these conversations with learning a little bit about the agency founders and yourself in this case, and to learn a little bit about how you got to where you got to running a business like this. Because as I said to someone the other day, I don't think it's a natural choice necessarily to go into running an agency, and I know you've got a fascinating back history. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know how fascinating, but I'll try to make it sound interesting. Um, yeah, I wanted to be a sports journalist. Grew up in suburban Philadelphia and went to college at American University for print journalism, which of course I had no foresight as to where the world was going and media generally. But while in Washington, decided to do a second major in political science, and by senior year. My internship that I took for communications was with a congressman who fortunately had been a professional football player, U.S. football player. And so it was kind of a perfect merger of the two. I was interested in politics. I was interested in communications. And when I was in college, I had a concentration in marketing. So in many ways, that's what Bravo Group became, like three things that I thought all went together. Before I kind of got out in the world, but then I worked in Congress for a few years, and in Washington and for a few different members, including one from the suburban Philadelphia where I grew up, and then had an opportunity to come back to Pennsylvania just to run the state Republican Party when the first George Bush was president. And so the opportunity to work on a presidential campaign and work at a state level was something that we were told that in politics, that's a great thing to do. Get out of Washington. It's really rather sterile. All the politics really happens at the states. And so I went back. He was going to get reelected by a lot, and obviously he did not. Everything kind of collapsed, and then I never left. But by then I met a congressman who was running for governor in Pennsylvania, and named Tom Ridge, and liked him so much. My wife and I just thought, let's stay. And so we were involved in his election, and along with another congressman who got elected senator. And at that point, went to work in the administration. So I spent 4 years working for the governor, and as a top aide, understanding really the nexus between how policy and communications work. And I cared about campaigns because I care about what happens between the campaigns. And that idea, I care about the policy. And after 4 years of doing that, and we were about to have a second child, my wife and I, and we didn't want to be kind of caught in an election cycle any longer. And so I knew nothing, and therefore I did start an agency. At the time, I had two clients that had potential clients that said, "Hey, if you leave the administration, I'll hire you." So after the governor's first term was over, I left and started Bravo. I had two clients. One was in land use for waste management, which is a large, very very large trash company and recycling, and one of the biggest in the world probably. But and then the other was in the education issue around educational reform. And so I got to do what I cared about, and really apply all the skills that I'd learned in terms of understanding and translating policy, along with how to use those skills tactically, apply them tactically to big public policy challenges. And mostly, I'd say the insight was that simply that lobbying which is part of a government relations mix for any company, is a tactic. It's not a strategy. And so often the failures of achieving public policy goals for key organizations or companies, they confuse that, and they have lobbying as their strategy. And once that kind of one note, I talked to them. Here's what they told me. I just believe that the ability to bring campaign style approach to public policy campaign, outside of a capital, could be much more decisive inside. And so we've spent the past now 20 some years doing exactly that, building out the capabilities and in a way that we've been able to consistently have really high success by changing the model a bit of how public policy and influence is done.
Cool. I think we forget actually, or perhaps just don't realize the complexity of and the scale of US politics, both in terms of the operation. And you mentioned moving outside of Washington because it's a bit stale. I know most politics is the same. It tends to be focused around a capital city and decision making there. But actually, the regional stuff gets put slightly to one side and it's less. But of course, in the States, the numbers are that much bigger in terms of numbers, but also the amount of people that are influenced by policy. So of course, I think it's one must always remember the scale. So I mean, you founded the Bravo Group, and it's an agency. You're there in Harrisburg. What exactly do you do, and for whom? I guess on a day-to-day basis now.
Sure. We do really, kind of three core things. We do manage government. We will be hired to do manage government relations. We will handle marketing campaigns that are not for product, but for public policy and ideas, or or for organizations where government's a consistent factor in their success. So we're an agency of record for a bank, which is highly regulated. We're an agency of record for utilities. Again, they're highly regulated. We do a lot of work for hospitals, for pharma and biopharma, both companies and trade associations. So we work with a nexus of clients that are highly concentrated, I'd say, in energy and healthcare, some education work, others as well from time to time. But those are ones where there's consistent challenges. I mean, politics is who gets what. And therefore, there's always some controversies around a push-pull, and the ability to present an organization and their issues in a way that's politically sophisticated is often a gap that companies have and organizations have, because marketing in big budgets, often what we'll see is they didn't position for government. Because government may not be viewed as the purchaser, or how you would think of a traditional CMO, which is so companies that are excellent at traditional marketing skills may not have factored in all of the stakeholders that are that have a massive effect on the success of the organization, but they're not directly who the customer is. And and then you see a COO, a corporate chief communications officer, who doesn't have the budget of the marketing operation, who's trying to beat back the hordes by putting out press releases and earn media. And now we're in a world where we're built for digital first. We have a tech stack that we will always operate off of, because you have to be positioned to tell your story and position your organization in a way that's both politically winning and consistent with the kind of the business goals that the organization has. So with that, we almost always start with digital, and we have our own online research platform that we use to do qualitative and quantitative research. And so we start with data from the beginning, and we're able to rapidly build audience models to communicate with the key constituencies from there, integrate that with online relationships, and so we're a combination of who we know, what we know, and what we do.
Yeah, I mean, so listening to you talk, there's a sort of fabulous complexity to the world that you work in, by the sound of things, and it sounds like you thrive in delving into that melee of complexity in many ways, I guess.
We were lucky early on to do work for a company that was a compilation of a lot of professors from Wharton, and that were academics on strategic decision making. And a lot of we're very much imprinted on the idea of making decisions in uncertainty, which is, frankly, we kind of laugh at. It's like, if there's no uncertainty, there's no decision to be made, right? So we're always, instability is one of those things that doesn't mean you stop and wait. You have a strategic plan in which to be able to consistently move forward, even when there's lots of complexity.
And I know you over the years, the business obviously changes, but how big are you now? How many people have you got there in Harrisburg?
We are around 40 people right now. We were before pandemic. We were significantly larger, and we had a lot more, a lot more people lived in Harrisburg, and
Yeah.
through so we're like many companies by balancing the mix of hybrid and as well as consultants versus employees themselves. We have a lot of consultants as well, and so we kind of rethought a lot about how we operated when we didn't have everybody in an office for 5 days a week.
Yeah, and I guess given what you do and how you work, that makes perfect sense actually. Because the type of people you're working with. Um, I mean, I guess to take that bit further about sort of uncertainty. I mean, we live in a world now where, it's becoming increasingly uncertain, and setting aside any sort of political views, the current administration in the US is making a lot of changes that are impacting around the world, and some of these impact obviously in our industry as well, because we work with the clients that are affected by the decisions that are made. I mean, where do you see a lot of the changes? Where do you see the opportunities, perhaps in the next 6 to 12 months for our industry?
Yeah, I think right now the effect, unfortunately, has been a lot of pausing by organizations. I think even when we were together in March talking to other agency heads, you've seen a lot of clients that are taking longer to just make a decision on something they want to do and doing shorter terms. And you don't get time back. Time's linear, and so
Yeah.
the idea, and you can't always apply more resources in 2 months to achieve something that you should have started 4 months ago. Sometimes time's for you and sometimes against. So we spent a lot of time trying to have clients understand, and some do and are embracing it, that particularly when it comes to competing in public affairs world, like you can win early or you can lose late.
Mm.
It's not a decision you're always in control of, much like you're not in control of what somebody says about you on the internet or anything else. You have to go compete for audience every day. And so I do think the opportunity is that, particularly now that there's so many decisions being made by, the president administration that are, and obviously it's questionable whether they have the power to make all these decisions, but they're making them.
Yeah.
And so for the organizations that have kind of sat back and said, well, this is what they told us they do, and then they're surprised when they hear something different, they weren't prepared. The idea that, well, how could you have known? Well, you have to reassert your brand every day. You have to assert it in your value proposition and make it harder for people to be opposed to what you're doing, because you have a mission in which to that you're pursuing. So for us, that's where to me the opportunity is. Those companies that are succeeding are the ones that are right now engaged and fighting for the audience and the turf that they have, so that they have some leverage and some power. And for us, while we're based in Harrisburg, it's one of these things, and this is true, I'm sure, anywhere in the world. Like there's almost no such thing as a Washington issue or an issue in the Capitol. It's an issue in the Capitol because it's an issue outside the Capitol. It gets made that way. And the influence model of important people in important rooms making important decisions is one that we've seen lose again and again and again to the power of public opinion and broader organized efforts. And so and yet I think the instinct of organizations and corporations, it's still in terms of we're going to have my CEO talk to this important elected official, and we think we'll be able to negotiate it. And that's true, except when it gets pierced, and it keeps getting pierced again and again and again. And now we're in a world where podcasts and everything else that's out there that's growing in growing in popularity, growing in audience, whether they're emails, Substack, any of those kinds of things. And I think it should be an age rich for communications firms that are dialed in terms of how to actually reach broad audiences rather than just kicking out bland corporate statements.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually, isn't it? Because I mean, this sort of democratization of access to information, which we've seen has sort of exponentially grown over the last decade, and it requires a much faster response all the time, but that response still has to be as measured as perhaps it would have been if it was slower. So there's an interesting balancing act, I guess, to have there. But I think, and it would be remiss of me not to ask you, of course, but there's AI has a big involvement in this whole process. I mean, what's your take on AI from where you sit in with what you do? How's that affecting your industry, and are you using it? And do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing? Sorry, it's a big
Yeah, I
question.
think it's yeah. No, well, first off, I think it's something you almost don't have much time to even make a decision. Is it good or bad? Because it's coming.
Yeah.
And so it becomes, how do you navigate that? I think it has the ability to improve people's lives exponentially. And I think in the industry and the work, we are not. I would say we're in the testing phase of most of it. I think there are certain tasks that human assisted it makes much better. I don't think anybody's ready to turn everything over to it for a while, if ever. And I think the perceptions of this steamrolling everything, I think are probably wrong. I mean, I think there's certain things that can be done. I think people have become much more media literate. I mean, it used to be a generation ago, we would talk about trying to teach children how to use technology, and we would talk about how to media literate. Now you have to talk to your kids about how to use technology and how to be media literate. And so I think all of those things, factored into the idea that you still have, I think, individuals that are going to, it should be the age of Socrates, right? Like, this is about the prompt. And so your ability to ask the right kind of questions, and I have to throw that in because my Bravacos is Greek. But the idea of it, I think, is where the critical thinking skills and everything else, to have something at your fingertips that you can generate something that used to take weeks, I find brilliant, in
Mm.
terms of, but you still then have to go execute it. You still have to convince individuals to take action, whatever that call to action might be, and whether that's in public policy or products or anything else like that, where there's humans behind all of these decisions, and therefore it's only going to be as good or as impactful as a way in which it helps people improve progress in their own daily lives. So I'm excited by the age of it. I think that we're in this age of AI right now, and where I live in Pennsylvania, we are a major power center, and have the ability to produce both through natural gas, and they're restarting one of the nuclear power plants, maybe 15 minutes away from me, that Microsoft will run and use entirely for its own data center. So there's some other, there's the challenges of delivery as well, and as we saw through parts of Europe when the energy went down, you kind of, all these things are pretty well interconnected in terms of our perception of the future. I think we're trying to get to. Same with electric cars. What does that actually look like in terms of having an electric grid that's reliable enough to support that? And so I look at AI. I think we stopped talking about the next big thing, which is still not the next big thing, blockchain. But I think the impact that will have in probably concurrent with the rise of AI, in terms of how you can operate companies, and its ability to decentralize a lot of companies and decision making in our industry as well, I think is also something that I spend a decent amount of time thinking about and planning for.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I think the sort of interconnected elements that you mentioned there, not just across our society, but also within our industry. I think we tend to forget that if you reliance on this, there's a sort of domino effect if it stops working, and that's where the human element often has to step in to fill that gap. And I think you're right, we can't have that over reliance, but we do need to be aware of the technology and where it stands. Very interesting. Chris, I mean, you play in a very specific space, and you have a very specific set of skills, and huge experience. If any of our Mission Hubs partners are looking at the US market, maybe their clients are already in the US market, how can you help them?
Yeah, I mean, we really, if there's a company or an organization, a cause that's connected to activation for, whether it's building public policy support, or donation. We've done a decent amount of that work as well. If it's positioning a company, for instance, we're working with a company that was a spinoff from a huge European company that has mining operations across North America and South America, and energy assets, and really anywhere that needs to be well positioned to operate and succeed, where there's a a level of regulation that they have to navigate. We've done that kind of company where we do from the positioning to the creative to agency of record, and therefore position well for when the inevitable public policy and controversies come. Are all things that it's a way we foundationally will build a certain kind of brand. And I think, as I mentioned, we don't really do product per se, but companies that are operating, we've done at every level in the energy space in terms of upstream, midstream, downstream, which means right down to utility, from the generation to the transportation to utilities and hospitals, or and anything healthcare related. All of those are categories that we're deep knowledge and experience in terms of and have done an incredible amount of qualitative and quantitative research and a lot of perspective how to navigate that. And we've done work outside of the U.S. as well. We worked through which is now no longer functioning, but USAID. So we worked in Eastern Europe and some other engagements in Latin America as well. The technology side of that is what we're also incredibly good at in terms of building communications and audiences through digital platforms.
Cool, thank you, Chris. As ever, it's a pleasure talking with you. We could natter as we probably would do for most of the afternoon, but time is against us. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to reach out to you, it's fine just to we'll put your details up at the end on the end screen. That's fine to reach to you directly, I assume.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm on WhatsApp and my email bravacos@thebravogroup.com.
Fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for becoming a Mission Hubs member, and we're excited to be working with you.
I'm excited to be part of Mission. So thank you.